Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to a special podcast series on compliance lessons from Venice. I just got back from a trip to Venice, and I put together a short podcast series on the compliance lessons that can be learned from this most stunning city on the globe. But first, a word about the newest podcast series on the Compliance Podcast Network, which will be premiering in December, Great Women in Compliance. Looking for the top new podcast in compliance? Look no further than Great Women in Compliance, a podcast with Lisa Fine and Mary Shirley, produced by One Creative. In this podcast series, Lisa and Mary will talk to some of the top female compliance practitioners literally across the globe about how they have achieved their position and what other women can do to move forward in compliance. It's going to be a great series. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Episode 3, Selfie-Sticks and Risk Assessments. One of the insights I garnered in my trip to Venice was that the street vendors who usually sold knockoff purses or other types of leather goods were selling selfie sticks, and of course the use of selfie sticks by tourists. These street vendors had moved almost exclusively to selling selfie sticks. They clearly were responding to a market need and then moved to quickly fill that niche. While the economics, inventory, bureaucracy, market responsiveness of such businesses may be a bit more nimble than the traditional U.S. entity doing business overseas, it does bring up a very good lesson for the compliance practitioner, and that is of a risk assessment. A risk assessment is a tool for a variety of purposes. Certainly moving into a new geographic area is an important reason to perform a risk assessment. However, it can be used for a new product offering, such as a selfie stick. As stated in the 2012 FCPA guidance, as a company's risk for FCPA violations increases, that business should consider increasing its compliance procedures, including due diligence and periodic internal audits. The degree of appropriate due diligence is fact-specific and should vary based upon industry, country, size, and the nature of the transaction, and the method and amount of third-party compensation. Factors to consider, for instance, include risks presented by the country and the industry sector, the business opportunity, the potential business partners, and level of involvement with governments and the amount of government regulation and oversight, exposure to customs, and immigration in conducting business affairs. When assessing a company's compliance program, the DOJ and SEC take into account whether and to what degree a company analyzes and addresses the particular risk it faces. So what if your company comes to market with a new product, or in the case of Venetian street merchants, moves to sell a product for the first time, even if it is not exactly new? Obviously, you need to consider all the government touchpoints that could bring you into a potential violation. You should determine not only what the licenses you will need to purchase, but how you will obtain them. Walmart is alleged to have gotten into hot water in Mexico under the FCPA for paying bribes to obtain permits to do business in that country. So will your country obtain licenses directly, or will you use third parties? What about the continued quality control of your new product? If there is food in the product, or if you are in the food product industry, this means continued inspections of your products to assure they meet government standards for the countries that you import into and sell into. Make sure that you have a hiring process in place to weed out any wives, sons, or daughters of any food service inspectors who may be tasked with inspecting your food. Of course, do not hire such inspectors for jobs directly either, especially if they do not have to show up or perform any duties to get paid for your jobs, as it could clearly be a conflict of interest and, at least in one case, has been found to be an FCPA violation. If you're going to manufacture your selfie stick equivalent in the country where the new products will be sold, or rather, if you're not going to do so, how will you import them? Who will be interfacing with the foreign government on tax issues for importing of the selfie sticks? Will they be brought into the country in question for sale on a permanent or temporary basis? All questions that have gotten U.S. companies into FCPA trouble when they paid bribes to answer, assuage, or even grease the palms of those who might answer or facilitate some of the answers to those questions. Turns out the compliance practitioner can learn quite a bit from the selfie stick. and not all of it is simply self-indulgence. The compliance program must respond to your business initiatives. But how are you going to know your business initiatives if you do not have a seat at the table of what the business is doing? So do you attend meetings of your business unit? Are you aware of new product offerings? Are you aware of new service offerings? Are you aware of either of those being sold in new geographic areas? Are you part of the planning? Are you doing a risk assessment, pre-sale for any of those? All of those are important questions. Turns out you can learn quite a bit from the Selfie-Stick. But this is another compliance lesson from Venice. So until the next episode, Sao. And I hope you'll join me for our next in this special podcast series, where I take a look at how the Venetian gondoliere informs your compliance program. This is Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of my special 5-part podcast series on compliance lessons from Venice. And I hope you'll join me again for another episode. I also hope you will subscribe to my podcast series either through Libsyn, through my website, www.fcpacompliancereport.com, through JD Supra, or through my new site, the Panoply Network. I also hope you will check out the Great Women in Compliance podcast series, which premieres on the Compliance Podcast Network in December 2018. Compliance Lessons from Venice has been a special presentation of the Compliance Podcast Network.